There is about to be a car right here that you have never seen before. In fact, nobody has ever seen before. Hi guys, I'm Shmi, hello, and welcome back to the channel where I cannot emphasize how cool this is that a manufacturer is entrusting me with bringing a brand new model right here to the Shmuseum to take a first look and share with you. This is a car that prior to today, when we're sharing this video, has not even been revealed to the world. You might have been able to guess it was coming, but we're going to be able to take a full look around, go through all of the details from right here at my garage. Over the years, I have been incredibly lucky to own a number of McLarens, and my 675 LT Spider is well and truly a permanent member of the collection for all of the memories and everything that really led up to this, because I bought my first McLaren over a decade ago. Back in early 2014, I introduced the MP412C directly from the McLaren Technology Centre, filming the car under H-Block at MTC in Woking, England, wrapped already in Shmi blue, but a car that really elevated beyond anything that I had owned up to that point. The likes of my Aston Martin V8 Vantage Roadster that I still own now, and the Audi R8 V10 Spider that I had between. It was a car that integrated so much very clever Formula One derived technology, like a carbon fiber monocoque, like precog with the rocker paddles for the 7-speed SSG DCT gearbox, also the likes of brake steer by torque vectoring, and I loved all of the clever stuff that McLaren had brought into a road car, and a company that was really in its infancy. The 12C was their first series production road car, and if you remember at the time, it competed with the likes of the Ferrari 458 Italia and Lamborghini Gallardo. It was so far ahead in terms of performance, in terms of tech, in terms of what it offered, and I loved that year of ownership, the different events, experiences, road trips, doing tons of miles with it. So eventually I upgraded it to the McLaren 650S Spider. I literally unwrapped the Christmas present of my bright mantis green 650S convertible, my first full open top supercar experience. The R8 V10 had been epic, but this was on a different level. From there, I then progressed into the 675 LT Coupe, which of course was fantastic in cerulean blue, but eventually swapped that out into the 675 LT Spider. Now, all of these are P11 platform cars, but the two convertible McLarens are easily the standouts in terms of the driving experience. I've been lucky as well to own for 5 years until recently the McLaren Senna also, but when it comes to enjoyment on the road, there is something that has to be said about driving a brand new Spider. Which brings us to the relevance of today and what's about to be here, the McLaren Artura Spider. I took a first look at the McLaren Artura at the McLaren Technology Centre back in April 2021. That car in flux green was really a next step on in technology with the hybrid V6 powertrain, but the Spider features a ton of new upgrades and improvements and things to take a look at that have been bespoke for this specific car. It's actually about to be delivered here to the Shmuseum, and I need to say thank you in advance to McLaren for this opportunity. How cool is this that I'm about to have a car right here that at the point we're filming this hasn't even been revealed to the public, and it's going to be here in a moment. So let's do this. Let's take a first look at the new McLaren Artura Spider. Fast forward and some things have changed in the barn, and of course we have the ESG switchable glass for the magic reveal of what awaits us. Press the button and boom, the new McLaren Artura Spider. Let's come and take a look at the open top version of McLaren's hybrid V6 supercar. Now there are plenty of changes to talk about here, not only the folding hardtop roof that this has, but also updates to the Artura in general in the Spider and Coupe form for 2025. Now it is an amazing opportunity that this car is here right now, but let me hop in and pop the roof down, because of course that is what we want to see about this. A new sound actually comes with it as well. Inside here, carbon monocoque, the screen, all things we'll go through, and in fact also the electrochromic roof, which at the press of a button can be tinted or go completely clear. But turn on the ignition and then pull the switch here and you will see it opens up the tonneau cover behind me. It will then fold open the panel over my head, which takes only 11 seconds and can of course be done while you're driving as well. Super simple and easy, just like that, and you then have the open top Artura driving experience. Now back here, there's a lot to discuss. These floating buttresses have many different purposes in terms of the airflow, but the fact that they're also clear means you have great visibility from inside. This has all been reworked in terms of the positioning of the chimney for the hot V engine, but also the different vents and airflow management that it all offers inside. Plus, power is boosted. We now have 700 horsepower, along with some very clever things that are going on behind the scenes. Safe to say, there's a lot to this. It's a very exciting car, and I think we should do a full walk around to go through the details. I'm going to break this down into a few different sections. We will start with taking a look around the car to talk about the aerodynamics and the design, and primarily everything that's going on back here, because there are a lot of new features. For example, the intakes just here, the airflow managed through the car and where it all goes. Then we'll move to the powertrain, the internal combustion engine, along with the axial flux e-motor and the upgrades now for the new model year, along with what that means for existing Artura customers. Plus, we will also take a good look at the interior, where of course we now have a few new controls and some additional features that have been added to it as well, before of course also talking about more of the technology and everything going on underneath the skin, because there is a lot of it in this car. A very exciting car, as I said, because this is McLaren's first hybrid Spider. Now, in terms of hybrid cars, the lineup has previously seen the McLaren P1 hypercar and of course more recently the McLaren Speedtail, but the Artura was their first series production hybrid. This is of course the first series production hybrid Spider. It near on matches the Coupe for performance, the same top speed, almost the same speed to get there as well. But I want to focus on the exterior first. So let's start there and talk about the design, starting right around the very front. And one feature in particular I always quite liked about this are the headlights. And there are loads of features around the design that actually link back to older McLaren models. And this shape you will recognize from the logo. The speed mark tick of the McLaren logo that is mimicked through the lights. Like on the 720S, you have the cooling and the radiators going through. There have been a whole host of upgrades to the ADAS system that have now gone into this. So in addition to what was available before, the new model years also offer blind spot monitoring and cross-traffic monitoring as well. As we come around, familiar from the 600LT, the louvres over the arches to help with swelling air. As we come down past the side, of course, these enormous intakes for the airflow management. But one thing I found quite intriguing is that even the door handle part here is all to do with managing the airflow. That is wind, tunnel and aero tested. Have a look up above though, and the floating buttress, something we've seen on a number of McLaren models, including the Artura Coupe. But here, there are two things to point out. Number one is the fact that this is a clear window. It's made from polycarbonate as opposed to being glass on the 720, 750 and 765 because of the shape, because of the extra curvature. But what it means, if you look over at the other side, is that you see straight through it. So from inside the car, it significantly reduces your blind spots. But not only that, have a look underneath. There is actually an intake here for cooling. And this is very clever. So the air coming over the car is actually directed by this built-in gurney up at the top to direct it over the top and to smoothen down here and in towards these coolers. Air underneath is of course coming through and over as well. And the air going through here is actually directed through where it then comes out here underneath the third brake light, both creating a separation for the electronics and the very hot engine below, but also with this gurney creating a low pressure air here for the airflow that comes out of the chimney on the back. Now this itself had to be significantly repositioned from where it was before on the Coupe, given that the fact that there is a roof that now folds in over the top of that. But not only this, there's also airflow here that comes in from this side. In fact, the central side there has airflow coming through and directed this way, so you have this cold air, hot air and cold air to bring the air out over the back of the car. You also have airflow coming through here to the radiators for cooling, similarly on this side, as well as the other part on this one, because again it's split, actually goes all the way back in and out this way to create a separation between the roof and the hot engine that's down below it. It's very clever where all of this is going through this car. The rear deck is reminiscent of the P1, and by that I mean the shape back here, which is to do with the aerodynamics, but also note how it is one single piece that comes all the way from the door on one side around the entirety of the back of the car to the door on the other, and that is thanks to the hot forming technique from aluminium that enables the possibility to make larger, more complicated shapes, both for being lightweight, but also you will notice for reducing the number of panel gaps and lines. You basically have on this car the tonneau cover, the rear clam, the bumper, the lower sides, doors, front wings, bonnet and front bumper. And that is effectively the entirety of the Artura Spider. We've got these strip tail lights, and we need to talk as well about the exhaust system, because both the standard exhaust and the optional upgrade sports exhaust have been changed to feature this new element inside, which actually pinches the airflow to change the sound, to give it a new profile. We'll get this fired up in a moment to hear a little bit of that, but effectively widening the breadth of sound in terms of the characteristics that you can have from the car. Down below, we've got the diffuser, of course, again, tested for aerodynamic effect, hiding inside the 8-speed dual clutch transmission, the SSG, seamless shift gearbox, which has also been reworked with a new pre-fill function to shift 25% faster than before. Coming around towards the front, I don't think I mentioned, but the windshield surround is actually carbon fiber. In fact, lots of lightweight components, lots of carbon fiber incorporated into the car overall, as you would probably expect for such a thing. Familiar from before, quite narrow front tyres, in fact 235 sitting on the 19-inch wheels up front. If we move towards the rear, back here we've got the, 295. So as sports cars or supercars go, fairly narrow overall, but new design with the contrast of the lime green metallic calipers on this against the beautiful blue paintwork. Moving to the powertrain, and something I'd like to show you which you wouldn't normally see on one of these, but of course it's a complicated hybrid system, and I want to explain the upgrades in both the Coupe and Spider and what that means for existing owners. So there's a 3-litre twin turbocharged V6 mid-mounted somewhere in here driving the rear wheels, but of course it sits beneath the roof panel and the tonneau cover, so you can't see a whole lot of that unless you were to access it. Now I want to give you a quick sneak peek as to how this works. So let me just turn on the ignition, which needs to be on to show you, and then open, or rather close the roof, but open this up and ping the roof panel forwards. There are 8 electric motors that do this very seamlessly, very quietly, and very calmly. It's actually quite impressive how easy that is to do. And then from here, you have a few controls, including one to open the tonneau cover on its own, because in here, and you have to appreciate how tightly packaged everything actually is. This is where you can access your oil and a few other things, but also this panel that would be opened when the car is in for service, if they need to be able to access or get to any of the components or parts that it has back there. Unlike other models, like the 675 LT, 720S, 750S, etc., there's no storage in there because, well, I'm led to believe it will get quite warm. And of course, you've seen the packaging, which is all down to keeping this as low as possible for the maximum view that you can have backwards through that window, which of course you can lower as well. So talking engine, now we have a total of 700 horsepower. It effectively retains the same e-motor as before. And what's interesting about that is with the same motor and battery, they've actually managed to increase the amount of electric drive range from 19 miles, which was 31 kilometers, to 21 miles, 33 kilometers by the software, which I think is quite clever. The combustion engine is now up an additional 20 horsepower to 605 from 585 before, with 585 newton meters of torque. But what's clever about the changes that they've done for that is that it's all about making you want to drive it. It's through the rev range rather than just being at the top end. So it's about that snappier, sportier experience and feeling, which obviously I'd love to find out for myself out on the road. To give you some of the numbers, 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 62 miles an hour in here, 3 seconds, matching the Coupe. 0 to 200 kilometers an hour, 124 miles an hour, 8.4 seconds, only 0.1 behind the Coupe at 8.3. 0 to 300 kilometers an hour, that's 186 miles an hour, in the Spider is 21.5 seconds, only again 0.1 behind the 21.4 seconds of the Coupe. And onto your top speed, as I said, of 205 miles an hour, 330 kilometers an hour. These are big numbers. This is a very fast car. And of course, the idea with the hybrid system and the different driving modes, whether you're in full electric, driving in hybrid, where it will adjust backwards and forwards depending what you need, or if you're in one of the two more track-focused driving modes, is that the different profiles basically allow this to happen in the background. The idea is that for you as the driver, it's all super easy. It's just happening, it's doing its thing. And I'm interested by the amount of electric range, because that's enough for a quick run somewhere without having to necessarily fire up the combustion engine if you want to be quiet, or you just enjoy the fact that you can, because at the end of the day, that is part of it as well. All with this 8-speed dual clutch gearbox, which, like I mentioned, now has pre-fill for 25% faster shifts. It was already pretty quick before, so I can only imagine how quick it can shift now when you're out driving it in anger on a racetrack. Moving then to the interior, let me show you a little bit more through what we have here. So of course the performance sports seats with the contrast interior with these accents that match some of the exterior detailing and the illumination, as you can see around the door, looking very smart. Of course, based around the carbon fiber monocoque, the same carbon tub that you have in Coupe and Spider. They share that in common, which, like the other newer models, is much easier for swinging your legs in. For the dashboard display, we have the handling controls up here and the powertrain on the other side, as we saw obviously with Artura Coupe, but there have been some changes. So let me swing myself into the car here to show you a little bit more through it. Now, I have always particularly liked McLaren steering wheels. The shift paddles are mounted to the wheel. They have the rocker functionality, so you can either press them or pull them from either side, making that click just to let you know. And they also have precog, which means when you pull it gently, it knows what you're about to do, and then it will immediately pop it into the next gear when you then press the button. In the center, we have the 8-inch digital touchscreen with the physical control over to the side. I'm actually just going to press the ignition button, wake things up for the moment so you can see a little bit of this. We've got currently some of the information about the comfort driving mode that we have selected. This is where you control it up through here, and as you can see, up through sport and then into track, which firms things up in terms of the handling, the suspension side of it, and the other side does the throttle response. And as you can see here, going from electric, comfort, sport, or again up into track mode with a different display depending on the different driving modes and what you're in. But what has changed in here down below is the introduction of a wireless charging pad back here. This is actually an option. Normally that would be another cup holder, but there is now a wireless charging pad option in there. You've still got one cup holder here at the front, but nothing else to do with the central tunnel has changed. You still have your drive, neutral, reverse buttons, hazards, and the start button, because all of your controls for the roof have been mounted up at the top. This is where you have the rear window, so you can open that on its own. It will automatically go, if your roof is down, to a middle position, which is optimized for the airflow. But obviously the fun of driving, even on a wet day, you can still pop the roof down and hear more of the engine sound without having any of the rainwater coming in. You'll spot just down below it, actually, while we're talking about this, the Bowers & Wilkins speaker back here. This is a new speaker found only in the Spider. Of course, a very clever sound system, the optional upgrade system, which offers changing modes depending if the roof is open or closed, but having that new speaker to help with that sound experience. You also here, as I mentioned, have the switch gear for the roof itself, and the button there for the electrochromatic element of it, where you can change the tint. Now I am going to press this button, so foot on the brake, let's get this started. Fires up the V6 with a very nice rasp, as you can hear, and obviously helping with the battery, given I'm playing around with all of this while we're sat here. So to open it, you pull it that way. Yep, I need to confirm the tonneau is empty, because of course I actually had it open just a moment ago. But nice and simple from inside to give you a different view of it. And it is just like that. Very easy, up to 31 miles an hour, 50 kilometers an hour. You can get that all opened up. And then as you can see, that middle position of the rear window, as I mentioned before. Other details inside, the McLaren speed mark embossed on the headrest, this lovely piping that matches with the illumination around that door shape. Lots of those speed mark shapes that you see through the design, and then this new infotainment, which is significantly more responsive than the older systems. Obviously in the earlier days that was always a struggle. Now I do enjoy the drive, the feeling, that proper suspension and handling feeling. We've got the lift system here. you've got lane departure. And by the way, the ADAS systems in here, like the lane departure, remember what you had set before. So if you don't want that on because it annoys you, one press and it will stay off, and remember that the next time to make your life just that touch easier. And it gives you that graphic down in the middle at the bottom that shows you which setting you have it on. Of course, it also has traffic sign recognition and blind spot monitoring and everything else, as I've mentioned, along with the lovely soft close on the doors that pulls them down into position, and a great view. Even things like the door mirror arm are actually aerodynamic to help with the airflow into the side intakes. Those are engineered to have a purpose. They're not just bolted onto the side of the car and left to be where they are. The sun visors, pretty simple, but I guess do the job. No mirror on there. And the McLaren text up here, because of course there's a motor just inside there to latch it into place. And the passenger side doesn't get a rear view mirror. All lightweight. This dashboard with the air conditioning blowing out both through the vents and down here as well. So quite a lot to it. Sounds exciting. It'd be fun to go and take this for a little spin. So pop open the door. We've got some storage space here, but do be aware that when you open up the door, unlike the 750, they don't automatically close. Something could just fall out by the wayside there. You do have, and I want to talk about this, variable drift control, which was introduced first back with the 720, but effectively turn off traction control, which in this car, learning as I go, is hiding somewhat from me. Not even sure where it is. Yes, I am. How silly. It's up there. It's right there and easily available. When you've turned off or popped ESC into dynamic, one press like that, you then have variable drift control, where you can choose the angle and the amount of slip that you would like to have from it. So if you've turned on this functionality, you can choose how sideways you'd like the car to let you go on a scale all the way through from 1 to 15, which is actually really quite impressive, and obviously helps you hone in your driving skills and have some fun with that along the way. So lots of different driving modes. You can see we've got the battery charge level, and when you're down into full electric, it changes, or comfort and electric, it changes to show you the range in miles, as well as, or instead I should say, of the amount of percent that you have, because obviously when you're in the higher performing modes, it will be charging up on a much more effective basis to help you with your lap times. Very different profiles. Obviously this car has been driven, hence why the range is quite low at the moment, not to mention the fact that I am sitting here playing and pressing every single button that I can possibly find on it to test and run through to discover what the Artura Spider is all about. Certainly some nice steps and changes with it. Other things to talk about, technology under the skin. And you can imagine with the changes by the additional weight, it's only 62 kilos to have the folding hardtop over the Coupe, which is nothing as these things go, but that does require a change to the suspension, along with changes that have happened organically anyway, given it's been a couple of years, which are of course now found on both models there. There's a new Symposer as well, familiar from the ISG of the old P11 cars, that helps use a diaphragm to bring real engine sound into the cabin, which wasn't found before. But the advantage of that is you have a very real sound. It's not a speaker, it's bringing genuine engine noise into what you hear inside. In addition to that, there are new engine mounts, which will again give you more of a feel of excitement of driving the car, giving you more of that sense of what the engine is actually doing, plus a bit of functionality that Artura didn't have before that I quite enjoy from the different McLarens I've owned, is the reintroduction of spinning wheel pull away, known as burnout mode to you and I, except in here, unlike the other cars where you engage it and you feel like the computers are working away and getting ready, and then a second later it kind of dumps the torque and spins up the rear wheels, this is much more of a natural, just go straight to 100% throttle when you're in the right settings, and boom, it will light up those rear tires, and you will very quickly have a big bill to buy some new ones to get them fitted on the car, but you'll have had a lot of fun in the process. So I didn't really explain the power upgrade, and this will vary from one region to the next depending on specifics, but effectively as an existing owner of a 680 horsepower Artura, it will be possible at the dealer to get that extra 20 horsepower upgrade and to have the car then driving differently. Obviously with homologation rules and laws and things, it makes that a touch complicated in certain markets, but I guess in many it's going to be possible to bring it up into the 700s, which is an insane amount of power for the, I don't know what, entry-level supercar from McLaren. It's a big, big, big number when you consider that when the 12C launched as the flagship supercar at the time, it had 600 625 or 600, and then 625, and then 650 for the 650S. So exciting times and a lot of fun to be able to take a first look at this. I mean, how cool is it that the McLaren Artura Spider is here at the Shmuseum, and of course, being filmed before the world has even seen that this car is out there. It's back to how things were. Sadly, no more Artura Spider here at the Shmuseum. I'm not too sad about it because I do have my 675 LT Spider, which is actually coming on towards 20,000 miles now. That's how much driving I've done with this thing. And something that the Artura does as well in its convertible form that this does is that rear window going down. And honestly, you can't understate the benefit of that in a convertible, even if you never want to put the roof down. Never ever want to drive with the open top, even just opening the rear window. The extra feel you get of what's going on around you, the extra sound from the engine, the shift noises, the general feel of the environment is so much more fun, especially for a road car at the end of the day, which is what all of these things are. Even the LT, which is very much about the track ethos, is still a road car wearing a number plate, which means you're going to be driving it on twisty roads, out on the normal environment, and it's really special. This is a very, very significant car to me. As I said earlier, that whole P11 storyline being, I guess, almost part in some way of the growth of McLaren from the early days with the 12C when the company was still relatively unknown. And I have some amazing fun memories of taking that car to Italy, obviously where Ferrari and Lamborghini are very much established, and people had no idea what it was. They would come up to read the badge on the back because at the time the front didn't have the full logo, it just had the speed mark. So they'd go and read the badge on the back and you'd just hear people reading it, not knowing that brand necessarily, and then going through the 650 and the 675 and the 675 Spider and the Senna and seeing the understanding and awareness of what McLaren are all about as the dealership network has grown, as the client base has grown, as the company has significantly grown along the way. Now, it goes without saying that there have certainly been some ups and downs, as pretty much every company has had in recent years, but Artura has now, I guess, found its footing a little bit more with these new updates, with these new upgrades. And I should point out, by the way, that existing owners get the upgrade free of charge. It's not something you have to pay for to go and upgrade to that new 700 horsepower output, as well as things like the 5-year warranty and 3-year service pack that comes with the car and 10 years on the paintwork as well. So all things that are a big deal at the end of the day in terms of the ownership proposition. I really enjoy this car. It is honestly one of my favorite cars to go out and drive, and I've really enjoyed each time I've driven the various different models that have come since, whether that's the 720S, the 765 LT, the 750S, obviously the Senna. If we go back, also we've got the P1 and Speedtail and Elva. You've got the Sports Series cars, 540C, 570S, 600 LT, 620R. McLaren have made some amazing cars, and what you have to remember is that the company, at this point, in its present form, McLaren Automotive, has only been delivering road cars for a little over 12 years. That's not long, and they produce the cars and the technology that they do. It's quite remarkable, honestly, and really cool to see, as I also said earlier, that Formula One technology in so many of these things coming to the road cars, coming to cars that people like some of you guys and myself get to experience and certainly share through these videos, which is just mega. This was ahead of its time. I mean, the 12C was way ahead of its time. The 675 was the ultimate evolution of that. Arguably, there was the MSO HS, the 688 HS, which was very much this, but with a larger wing at the back and an extra 13 horsepower, which I suspect in the real world you probably wouldn't notice, but hyper limited in terms of numbers. But that's always been an amazing car. I drove the 750S Spider recently. That was an amazing car, and I suspect Artura Spider is going to be right up there as well. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity to drive it, to hear more of the sound, because it didn't sound hugely loud here. Obviously, I've only started it and given it some baby revs, so I can't comment fully, but it didn't sound as loud as perhaps I was expecting. And of course, ultimately, to see how it stacks up against some of its competitors, the likes of the 296 GTS and the MC20 Cielo, both of which we do know are significantly heavier. While I don't have official numbers, I would suspect that the cars in the Italian corner might be slightly embellished from what I've read and seen online, which I'm sure you can Google and find as well, versus McLaren's, which tend to be pretty accurate. So it is by far the lightest car in its class. It is by far one of the most advanced cars in its class as well. It's a very exciting thing that they've been able to introduce with loads of technology. And I think the whole fact that it was right here is just super cool. And I want to say thank you again to the team at McLaren for making that possible, to the guys who came down today, bringing the car, of course, to make sure it was all under wraps, and we weren't going to just go and drive it out down the street, given that It's not supposed to exist yet, quite at this point. So I think that's pretty much where we can wrap things up for today. I hope you've enjoyed this first look at McLaren's new Artura Spider. I would like to say thank you very much again to the team there, and of course to you guys for your support. It is absolutely crazy to me that this is somehow possible. Each and every day is mega, well, very much a mega pinch moment. Let's just put it that way. For now though, that is all. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.